My name is Kelly Goad. I'm the Clinical Director of Speech and Language Therapy here at Emerge Pediatric Therapy in Durham. And today I'm going to talk about some of our favorite language games to use here in the clinic, and also some ways that you can utilize language games at home to expand your child's language skills. Generally, I'm going to divide the games into three categories. The first is describing or guessing games. The second is storytelling games, and the last one will be games that work on persuading. So describing and guessing games are great for expanding language, expanding descriptive language, using more adjectives, being able to start to define words by using different descriptors like categories, size, shape, etc. They're also great for making inferences. So when we have just a bit of information, can we make a smart guess about what's being talked about? The first one that I'll show you is the game Headbands, which many of you are familiar with probably. It's a pretty popular game for kids. The age range listed on here is 7 and up, but I would say given scaffolding and some modifications in play, it could be used for children as young as even 3 to 4 sometimes. So the idea of the game is there's a headband, and then there are these clue cards that go on the top of the headband. And so obviously, if I weren't looking at myself in the camera, I wouldn't know what this picture is of, and I would have to figure it out. So the real way to play headbands, the correct way to play it, is to ask questions in order to identify what this picture is. So I might ask something like the category, am I a food? And my partner would say, no, you're not a food. I might ask, am I an animal? And they would say yes. And then I would have to ask additional questions to figure out what type of animal that is. The game is great because it has some question cards on it that give you ideas of what to ask, but it's great also for kids to come up with their own questions. In order to scaffold it for younger kids or for kids that have a hard time kind of thinking of those questions on their own, sometimes I play it where I have this on top of my head and the other person has to give me clues about it. So this is an animal and it swims in the water, but sometimes it can walk on land and it has a shell. And then I would guess it. And that may be an easier way to play with younger kids too, for you to give them clues for them to guess. So that is a great one. Another game that we frequently use that most people probably are familiar with or even played in their own childhood is the Guess Who game. And there are a lot of different versions of this. There are Star Wars Guess Who versions. We have a superhero one. We even have like one with animals and vehicles, all kinds of things. So the idea of this game is that you would pick a person card, at least in this version, and then the other person would have to figure out who your person is by asking questions. So, is your person wearing glasses, or does your person have red hair? Something like that. And then it's great for making an inference because if, for example, your partner says, no, my person does not have red hair, you have to figure out what to do. Okay, so all of these people have brown hair except for this one person that has red hair. Should I leave the red-haired person up or should I put them down? So it's a great way to practice that. Another great describing game that I like to use is called a barrier game. So we have an example of a barrier game here. It has, as you can see, an easel with the same picture on both sides. So the idea of this barrier game would be that my partner and I would try to get our pictures to look exactly the same. But the trick is we wouldn't be able to look at what was on the other side. So I'd be looking at my side and I might give my partner a direction. This board is magnetic. So I might have a magnet like this crocodile here, and I might say, put the crocodile in the river above the rock. And I have to give a pretty specific description because if I just said put the crocodile in the river, My partner might put them right here. They might put them up here. They might put them down here. They might have them going vertically. So I have to give a really good direction, and then my partner has to listen to my direction in order to place their magnet in the same spot on their board. This one that we have is from a website called Super Duper Publications. So it's a therapy specific website, and the game is called Magnetalk Matchup. But I'll talk to you a little about some ways that you can recreate that sort of thing at home without buying your own materials. And the last descriptor or guessing game I'm going to show you is called Outfoxed. This is a new one for us here at Emerge, but it's a pretty popular game. It is, if anybody's familiar with the old game Clue, it's similar to that, but for younger kids. So the idea is this fox here stole a pot pie, and he's hightailing it away to his foxhole. So you have to figure out which of the foxes was the thief. And in order to do that, you get clues and then you eliminate suspects. So you might have a clue like this fox is not holding a cane. So then you look at all the suspects you have on the board and see which ones are holding a cane and which ones are not, and then you can make an inference that way. So it's another really fun way to work on that describing and guessing skill. So in the category of describing and guessing, there are great ways that you could work those games into your daily activities without going out and buying one of these games that we have. These are awesome to use, but if you don't want to buy them, you could do things like I Spy. That's a great one for all ages, and you can modify it up or down depending on your child's skill level. For example, for a younger kid, you might give them many, many clues. So you might say, I spy something red and it's a fruit and you can bite on it and it's crunchy and it's right there in the room with you. So then they could guess apple. For an older kid, it might be similar to I Spy, but you would be giving them clues for something that's maybe not in the room, or you would be giving them fewer clues and they would have to fill in the missing pieces. It's also a great way to turn it back around and have the child give you clues about something. 20 questions, the classic game, is another great way to work on that skill. Another way to work on describing and guessing is a category game. So think of a category like fruits and see how many fruits you can think of within the category. You could pass the ball back and forth, and whoever it lands on, so to speak, so whoever cannot think of another fruit or another item within that category loses that round, and then it starts over with another category. Finally, a barrier game, similar to the one I showed you. You can easily recreate that with drawing or with block playing. For drawing, you could just each have 2 pieces of paper and a crayon or a pencil. Put a barrier in between you, a big binder or a box or something, so that you can't see the other side, and then give each other directions for what to do. And then it's really fun to see how similar the creations are afterward. You could also do the same idea with a binder or a box in between and have Legos, or for a younger kid, even Lego Duplos, and have your, see if you can make your creations the same. So take a big blue block and put it on the bottom. Put a yellow block on top of the blue block. Now put a red block under the blue block. Eventually you take the barrier away and see how similar your creations are. The next category of games that I like to play for increasing language skills is our storytelling games. So we have a couple of fun storytelling games here that I'll show you. The first one is for a little bit older kids. It suggests 8 and up. It's called Rory's Story Cubes. So it has a number of dice with different pictures, different symbols on the sides of it. And the idea is that you would take turns rolling the dice. Whatever the picture lands on, you add on to the story. So for example, with this one if we rolled all these. Once there was a sheep who was walking through the woods and found a magical key. That helped the sheep go up the rainbow, and eventually he landed on the moon, etc. You can do it where the child tells the whole story or where you take turns telling a story. This one is called Tell Me a Story, and it's for younger kids up to older kids. It's listed as ages 3 and up. It's from Ebu Games, which is a great company we like. There are a number of sets of these cards, all different themes. This one happens to be robotic themed. So same idea. There's the instructions there, but there are pictures, and then you can take turns just flipping over a card and adding onto the story, or if that's a little difficult, you can spread all the cards out and have you and your child pick a card to add onto the story. For creating your own types of story games at home without these special materials, a turn-taking story is a great activity just for every day, for when it's bedtime or when you're riding in the car or taking a walk. Just start a story and see if your child can continue it. To make it less pressure on your child, you can continue to take turns throughout, or if they really love telling stories, you can just kind of let them go free. But it's a great way to build narrative language skills and the idea of a beginning, middle, and end, and then eventually even being able to sequence and retell the story. This is not a game, but I love wordless books for this sort of thing. So wordless books are books that have no words in them, just pictures. So I love taking turns with a child describing each picture to work on that storytelling activity. And finally, for older kids, you can do what we call a dice story. So you can have 1 die or 2 dice, and you take turns rolling the die or the dice and seeing what number you land on. For older kids, it's great because you can also work on writing the story. But the idea would be however many you land on, that's how many words you can add to the story. If you only land on 1, you only get to add 1 word to the story. So you might have this idea of where the story is going to go, but your partner, rolls a 12 and then they take it in some other direction, and you have to kind of be flexible to add on to that. The last type of game that I'll show you is a persuading game. So the first example I have here is, this one's called You Gotta Be Kidding, the crazy game of Would You Rather. So it's a Would You Rather game for kids. It has, this one has a game board and little challenges too, but I like to use it just for the Would You Rather questions. So it might be something silly or gross. For example, would you rather have to eat a raw goldfish and chew it, or lick the bottoms of a man's dirty, smelly feet? So it usually gets kids interested and engaged. This one has choice tokens, so you can make your choice, cover it up. You can even work on guessing what the other person might choose based on what you know about them. But it's also great to work on persuading somebody, because once you make your choice, you kind of have to explain why you would choose that item or that choice. Another game that we have that we really love for this is called Obstacles. Again, it's from Ebu Games. I believe they changed the name of this, and now it's called Lion in My Way in the new version, but I think that new version is very similar, if not exactly the same as this one. So the idea is that you're working together. It's a collaborative game. You're working together to try and make it home, and you have all these obstacles in your way. For example, bees, thunderstorm, etc. And then you have these tools to help you, but they are random and might take some thought to figure out how they could help you. So things like a vacuum cleaner, a rocket, knitting. In the example of the thunderstorm, if you had a vacuum cleaner, rocket, and knitting, you might choose to use your vacuum cleaner to suck up all the rain in the thunderstorm, and then you can make it through. Or you might ride on the rocket so that you can get there quicker. Or you might knit yourself an umbrella and make it through the thunderstorm that way. So the idea of this game is that both people or all people playing the game would come up with an idea for what tool they think would be best to use to make it through this obstacle. And then the group decides or votes on which tool they're going to use. So eventually you continue to utilize these tools until you make it home. But it's a great way to work on trying to persuade others of what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, as well as to work on flexibility, because while you think your choice might be best, everybody else might not think so. So, as far as persuading games go, would you rather games are easy to come up with on your own. There's also, it's pretty easy to find lists on Google of would you rather questions if you're having trouble thinking of those on your own. Also, for older kids, having a debate about either a serious topic or a silly topic, would be fun to work on that sort of thing. So I hope this has given you some good ideas for ways to expand language in the context of gameplay with your children. As always, if you have any questions or concerns, please head to our website, emergepediatrictherapy.com.